Welcome back, pro wrestling fans. Welcome back, IWC. It's me. It's me. It's the G.O.C. coming to you live to tape 25 feet below the surface of the earth here for a special late night edition of Chaos Corner here on Guardian of Chaos, the YouTube channel. It's story time with the Guardian of Chaos. You're not going to want to miss this episode. It's going to be an extravaganza, a bonanza. Once again, this weekend we have snow here in the greater New England tri-state northeast area in the shadows of Titan Towers. So grab a cup of coffee, grab some tea, grab a little late night snack, maybe even an adult beverage, and kick back and listen to your old buddy. One man, unique, unedited, unscripted, raw dog for you, the fans. No Patreon, no paywall, no super chats, no Venmo, PayPal, Zelle, whatever the fuck it is that you guys use. And I apologize for the cussing. Follow me on all social media platforms, and you know what they are. Over on Twitter, aka X, it's at Big Daddy G.O.C. And the G.O.C. stands for the Guardian of Chaos. Follow me on Instagram, the Guardian of Chaos. My 2 accounts on Facebook, that's right, there's 2. Prodigio Fidelis El Guardian, and of course the old standby, J Brony. That's right, J Brony for all you jabronis and virgins and neckbeards and geeks and goons and mouth breathers. And no offense, man, kayfabe, lighten up, man, it's a joke. I'm hopping off all those other social media platforms. It's nice and toasty in here, it may be cold outside. So come on back and meet me here on Guardian of Chaos, the YouTube channel. I'll save that to say this. Don't you dare miss it. All right, fans. We're off all the other social media platforms. Gitter, Gab, Truth Social, Rumble, Twitter, X, Instagram, Facebook, whatever it is. And we're here on the mothership. Guardian of Chaos on the YouTube channel. Now stand by. Again, it's nice and toasty down here in the bunker. Let me have a little sip of the Java. And remember something, in order to get respect, you have to start with respecting yourself. Once you do that, you open other people's minds to respecting you. Because there's 3 types of people in this world. Those who don't know what happened, those who wonder what happened, and people like the G.O.C. that make things happen. Shout out in recognition to our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, because if he's for us, no one else can be against us. Let's stay fit, mentally, physically, emotionally, and especially spiritually with what's going on here in 2024. Wars all over the world, southern border invasion, politics, the economy, crime, all the other bullshit, social warriors, injustice, CRT, racial division, LGBTQ, and everything that else that everyone's trying to push on everyone. And listen, no offense to anyone. You do you. I'll do me. I judge people on how they treat me and the content of their character, not their skin color or their identity or any of that bullshit. So let me straighten that out here on this channel. And if you don't like it, you can change the fucking channel. And again, I apologize for cussing. But that's just the way it is here. I give you the good, the bad, and the ugly. We're a little more toned down here tonight. So I want you guys to enjoy this. Take notes. When you come here to this channel, you get actual facts. You learn something about history, about the industry, about the business. This is not fantasy booking or watching what's on TV or following your local WWE, AEW, New Japan, Ring of Honor, MLW, the NWA, TNA on Impact, whatever it is that you're following. Come here to learn something. I'll say that to say this once again, because I tell it like it is. And you know I constantly repeat it, and I'll continue to repeat it. 2,500 videos here on the channel. Coming up on those 1,000 subscribers, 500,000 total views. Go to my community page and you'll see what's going on here on the channel. Hit that like button, subscribe, share, leave a comment. And let's have some fucking fun, because life is too short, man. Jesus Christ is coming back soon. Don't be caught dead without him. School is in session. Story time. When I look back, I had no doubt in my mind that Dr. D, David Schultz, that's right, the original bad boy of pro wrestling, who I bounty hunted for back in the early 90s, into the middle 90s. Let that sink in as one of the gentlemen that I worked for at that point. Read the Mitt, go to the section here on the beginning of the YouTube channel and find out what I'm actually all about in reality, in life, respect. That Dr. D, David Schultz, would someday become one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. I first met Dave in the fall of 1980. I was my dad's champion back then, and it wasn't long before we worked against each other. I was only 23 years old, and I still had a lot to learn. Now, this is the foreword by Bret the Hitman Hart. The best there is, the best there was, the best there ever will be. So in 1980, Bret the Hitman Hart is 23 years old. In 1980, I'm trying to say that I was barely 18 years old as we go back and look on history. Because you know, when I was commissioner for the NAWA for over 20 years, the longest reigning commissioner in pro wrestling history, I worked with Bret the Hitman Hart on a couple of occasions. A great guy. Truly a legend. And then, of course, my background with bounty hunting for David Schultz. So you see the connection here on Story Time. I can't begin to describe how much Dave taught me in the ring. We had great chemistry together, and he taught me so much about ring psychology as a heel and a babyface. Dave eventually left my dad's territory, and 4 years later, when my dad unexpectedly sold his territory, I suddenly found myself in the WWF dressing room. One of the only wrestlers who knew me was Dr. D. I was coming back from a serious knee injury and was the low man on a totem pole while Dr. D was working as a top heel. In my first few months in the WWF, I was usually billed as the +1 other match, if you know what I'm talking about. And I sensed my days were numbered. Dave always gave me words of support at a time when I feared my wrestling career was done. It was David Schultz who said to me, work on your mic skills. Practice with a hairbrush if you have to. Work on that. But as far as being a worker, nobody down here can lace up your boots. Those words kept me from losing hope. It was around that time when a badass former football player decided to ride me in the dressing room. He kept bringing up stories about how stupid my dad's territory was and telling unflattering stories about my brothers with a big belly laugh and how we had a heel referee become the top heel of the territory. Funny enough, WWF would soon borrow the same idea. I defended my dad's business, which was Calgary Stampede. And I wasn't sure how to stand up to this big wrestler. Then suddenly Dr. D stood up and said, why are you picking on this guy? You want to pick on someone? Pick on me. Come on, you, pick on me. I'll never forget how strongly Dave stood up for me that night. And after that, David would ride this football player harder than anyone in the dressing room for being a gutless coward. The big, tough football player would just bow his head in silence. The more David rode him, the smaller he got. I remember Dave saying, back where I come from, you know how you deal with a bully? You get a bigger bully. Not long after that, Dave had his infamous interview with that jackass John Stossel. All I can say is that there never was a wrestler anywhere that didn't see Dave as a defender of our profession. Although I always felt bad about the legal mess my friend had to deal with, let alone losing his job and ending his career, I will say I was very proud of what Dr. D did. And whether they admit it or not, every wrestler gave him a silent standing ovation. Looking back on how David's words came back to me and how he made me believe in myself, it makes me sad and heavy in the heart to think of all the wrestlers that never got to work with him and all the fans that never got to watch all those matches. When I think of names like Jake the Snake Roberts, Macho Man, Roddy Piper, and so many others, including myself, I know Dr. D could have drawn money with all of us. The matches I had with Dr. D in my early days stand side by side with the greatest matches of my career. Dave has always been my friend, and he always has been one of my heroes as well. David Schultz was a man's man, as fearless and as dangerous as he was, yet one of the most honorable wrestlers the wrestling business ever knew. When I think of David Schultz, I think of these words. The bravest are surely those who have the clearest vision of what it is before them. Glory and danger alike, and notwithstanding, go out to meet it. Bret the Hitman Hart. Quote, January 1st, 2018. Stand by, fans. We're only 10, 11 minutes in there for that opening monologue, brought to you by the G.O.C. and then the forward there by Bret the Hitman Hart. That's right. Don't call me fake. All you fans out there from this last 2 decades, 3 decades could learn something from story time here today. Just check it out. I want you guys to know what you're in for, know what you're listening to. It doesn't get much better than this. All right, fans, let's jump right back into it. And again, from the bottom of my heart, I just want to thank all you guys with much love and respect for being here on this weekend, January 19th into the 20th and 21st. Go back and check out all the videos. I have everything from live to tape watch-alongs covering all the top organizations, story time, today in pro wrestling history, my own career, all the people and events that I've worked on. This is a channel like none other. Make it relatable to you, the fans. I bring you into my home and let you see who I am and put a face and a voice to the video. I get it. I scare the rats off cheesecake. I make onions cry. But that's why you're here. It was a cold December afternoon in 1984 when I stepped out of a hotel into the winter chill of New York City. We were a few days away from the start of a new year, less than a month from the start of the second Reagan administration. Remember the time frame. The San Francisco 49ers were on a collision course with their second Super Bowl victory, and I was on my way to the biggest match of my life. Just 3 days before, all the good boys and girls of the world had woken up to find their toys of their dreams wrapped beneath their Christmas trees. Santa Claus didn't visit the homes of bad guys, especially guys like Dr. D. Tonight, however, was my Christmas. I was working for the biggest company in the world, and I was about to face the biggest wrestling star in the world. I could see thousands of fans in line outside the building as I approached the arena, braving the cold to pay a steep ticket price for one of the biggest wrestling events of all time. I passed dozens of reporters and photographers from around the world as I tromped around the building to the security entrance. Cameras whirred and clicked, and photographers called out my name. Some nearby fans called out to me as well. Some words were kind, others weren't so kind. Matter of fact, they were downright murderous. It was a par for the course for the baddest bad guy in the business as I walked into the building. And that's a true story with David Schultz. Pro wrestling's original bad boy, legit badass. The noise and the hustle of the fans and reporters outside faded as the double doors of the building shut behind me. There were fewer people in the hallway than outside, but the action was twice as fast. Men with headsets, chattering men, miles of TV cables, men in suits making their rounds, preparing for an event that would be televised all over the world. This was not a house show in Corning. Let that marinate. New York. That's right. Not Corning, New York. This was Madison Square Garden, the mecca of professional wrestling, and the world would be watching. I entered the dressing room with my bag in hand, and as always happened, a hush fell over the room. You see, I was 6'5", 280 pounds of blue twisted steel and sex appeal with a well-earned reputation as one of the most dangerous men in the business. You could hear a pin drop as I walked to the bench and set my bag down. The Iron Sheik was the first to move. He walked over and extended his right hand. "Hello, Doc. How are you?" Terrible Iron Sheik impression. No, but I get it. The Iron Sheik greeted him warmly in return as Mr. Fuji walked up behind him. "Hello, Doc," said Fuji as we shook hands. The Samoans were next. Then one by one, the others completing a locker room ritual as old as our business. The mood began to mellow and people went back to their pre-match routines. I reached down and unzipped my bag, unpacking my gear and beginning my own preparations. I'd faced some huge names in more than a decade of traveling the world, but on that particular night, I would step into the ring to wrestle, maybe even shoot, with a man I considered to be the very best in the world. A man who had faced not only the best our business has to offer, but arguably the greatest fighter of the 20th century. As I started to prepare mentally for what was yet to come, my mind drifted back to the long road I'd traveled to come to this place. I remembered the long hours driving the back roads of Tennessee to Herb Welch's barn, where the old man would stretch me until I could barely move. I remembered the long drives back to the house, the painful walk from the car in the wee hours of the morning when my wife Peggy would come to help me and stagger through the front door, and the early wake-up call when I'd go to my day job and start all over again. I thought back to my earliest days working for Henry Rogers in that Malden, Missouri department store, spending $30 to make $25 for working 3 matches a night. I thought about riding the roads of Tennessee with Dennis Condrey and Phil Hickerson, enjoying sunshine of Florida and enduring the long, frigid drives, the provinces of Canada, across the wide provinces of Canada. Having come from nothing, being raised in a dirt-poor part of rural Tennessee, I considered every sacrifice to be a small price to pay in the hopes that one day I might be able to provide a better life for myself, my wife Peggy, and my daughter. I had paid my dues in full, and I had secured a spot with the first truly national wrestling promotion. I was already making more money than I had ever made in my life, and now I was preparing to face the man who had allegedly shortened the career of the great Muhammad Ali, Japanese legend Antonio Inoki. Konnichiwa, bitches, from Origato-san. If you know what I mean. If all went well, there was no limit to where I might go. The door of the locker room flew open, and once again the room fell silent. This was a different silence, not the respectful silence due to a world-class bad guy, but the fearful silence that took over when the boss walked into the room. There wasn't a haircut or a hair out of place on his head. His clothes were immaculate, yet something was off that night. You could see in his face he was angry, agitated. Something was wrong, and he was headed my way. He extended a hand my way. "Hello, David." I wasn't Dr. D to him. I was always David. "Hello," I said. He got right down to business. "David, there's a reporter here making a joke out of the business. I want you to do an interview. They're going to interview you. I want you to tear his ass up, blast him, stay in character, be Dr. D and tear his ass up." Vince McMahon Jr., mastermind behind the World Wrestling Federation, walked to the door. He paused before leaving and turned back to me. "We'll call you." And then he left. I had never heard of John Stossel before that night, but in the following years, I would get to know the man more than I ever wanted to know about him. The ABC News reporter was a do-gooder, a whistleblower. I'm sure he did a lot of good for some people, and I know he had faced hostile interviews before, but he was in dangerous territory that night. He had come to the hallowed halls of Madison Square Garden to expose the business. I and everyone else in that locker room had sworn to protect. A decade before, Vince McMahon threw kayfabe out of a courtroom window and down for the count. He wanted to be the guy to pull back the curtain and expose the Wizard of Oz. Kayfabed again. He wanted to prove it was fake. He should have known better. I had no idea he had already spoken with a former tag partner of mine. I wasn't aware of the interviews he had conducted with other members of the WWF roster. All I know was I had my orders. Blast him, tear his ass up. Vince had a long told me I was going to be the number one heel in the company. I was to be mean, nasty, belligerent, the baddest man in the locker room full of bad guys. He didn't have to tell me to tear his ass up. When he said be Dr. D, it was already implied. Herb Welch taught me to wrestle the old-fashioned way. He taught me to protect the business, a business that my family and I had come to depend on for our livelihood. Wrestling was my job. I had been taught to protect the business from day one, and when my boss, whether it was Stu Hart, Vern Gagne, or Vince McMahon Jr., told me to do what I had been trained to do, I did as I was told. Promoters knew they could count on me to get their dirty work done. In my mind, this was just part of the job. Knowing I was going to be on camera, I went to the sink and wet my hair down. I walked out to the hall where a number of wrestlers were already standing around, waiting for what was to come. Everyone heard my conversation with Vince, and they wanted to see the doctor take care of things. It's worth noting, if you've seen the video, that there are no baby faces in sight. That's because even in 1984, the number one rule was to protect the business. It wouldn't do to have 2020 cameras catch Hulk Hogan joking and chatting in the same hallway as Dr. D, right? Kayfabe? We dressed in separate locker rooms, the heels and the babies, and when 2020 arrived that night, we were all told to stay in character at all times. The man who first put a microphone in my face that night was Stossel. But when he approached, I assumed he was the man Vince said would interview me. He started asking me questions, and staying in character, I was short with him. How do you like the business? Stossel said. It's a great business. I really like it. We went back and forth for a bit, just like that. The guy was getting frustrated with me, and that's when John Stossel himself stepped in. So I stand corrected. That wasn't Stossel. Well, you know what Bully Ray said back to me in 05, 06? You know, Bully Ray, Busted Open After Dark, co-host on Busted Open Radio, perhaps the greatest tag team wrestler of all time. Two-time Hall of Famer, WWE, WCW, or TNA, whatever the fuck it is. A true legend. He said to me, give Big Daddy, the Guardian of Chaos, 5 spots and he'll fuck up 4 of them like I just did. I consider that to be a compliment coming from Bully Ray. I'm sure you've seen the video of me, in character, answering Stossel's questions leading up to the moment when I smacked him. What you don't get from the video is John Stossel actually started the interview over twice. He wasn't get what he wanted the first 2 times, but by stating and starting over again and again, he was clearly trying to push me to get me more agitated. By the 3rd go-round, I had more than enough of John Stossel. Stossel says, is this good business? And Doc, yeah, it's good business. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't. Stossel, why is this good business? Dr. D, because only the tough survive. That's the reason you ain't in it. And this punk holding the camera, the reason he ain't in it. The reason these rednecks ain't in it. Because it's a tough business. Stossel says, that's terrific. Doc, what? Is that all you got? Stossel, I'm going to ask you the standard question. You know, Doc, standard question? Stossel, I think it's fake. Oh, you think it's fake? And that's when it happened. I smacked him. That's right. I didn't smack him as hard as I could, but he still went down in a heap. What's that? Is that fake? That's what I said. What the hell's wrong with you? That's an open hand slap, huh? You think it's fake? Stossel started to stand. I smacked him with the other hand. And he fell down again. That's when he turned, tucked his tail between his legs, and ran. Mr. Fuji never flinched. The Iron Sheik never flinched. None of the wrestlers in the hall flinched. You get it, right? When people ask me if I was put up to it, that's the evidence I give them. Nobody was shocked. Nobody was shaking their heads. They didn't know the slap was coming, but they heard what Mr. McMahon had told me to do. Blast him. Tear his ass up. I was already known as one of the roughest men in the business, but that incident earned me that title of the most dangerous man in wrestling. It solidified my reputation as a badass and a tough guy that follows me to this day. And yours truly was just with Dr. D. David Schultz for the New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame class of 2023 induction. And then the next day in Warwick, Rhode Island at the Crown Plaza Hotel for Joe Bruin's Fan Fest 8, where I got to sit back and kick back with Dr. D and reminisce about our bounty hunting days and how he sent me all the way to Tennessee to pick up a guy. I stayed outside his house for 5 days, sleeping, pissing, and shitting all over the place, waiting for him to come back, and we caught him. 3 o'clock in the morning, he came back, umbriaga, half in the bag and stewed, and me and my boy Big Bird, we got him. Back in the trunk of the Lincoln Town Car. Brooklyn, Bronx crack houses. All over the Elm City. The most dangerous men in the world. A job that none of you would want to do. That society's afraid to do. Thank you, Dr. D. Although, you might still owe me a couple of bucks, Dr. D. But hey, man, okay. I got you, brother. I went back into the locker room and finished my preparations for the night. I was supposed to go on the last in the main event, but in a surprise move, I was told I was going on first. In spite of the short notice, I can honestly say I had the match of my life against Antonio Inoki. The fans ate it up, while reporters from around the globe snapped away at ringside. No one watching that night had a clue what happened backstage. It just happened. But as soon as the match was over, the boss came to see me again. This is McMahon Jr. talking. David, Stasso wants to have you arrested, said Vince. Get your bags and get going. Great work tonight. I don't have time for a shower or to change out of my gear. I threw my things in the bag and headed for the exit. There was already a considerable amount of activity backstage as I slipped out the back door and headed to the Hojo's, that's right, the Howard Johnson's in Manhattan. I had no clue that my run-in with John Stasso would not only become my legacy, but the beginning of the end of my wrestling career. I would be gone in a matter of weeks, forced out just prior to the biggest show of all time, WrestleMania. The Stasso incident also indirectly set me on a path to a life wilder, crazier, and more unbelievable than anything professional wrestling could have given me. Because just a few years later, I collected my first bounty. And there's the connection between the Guardian of Chaos and Dr. D. When I captured a member of the notorious Diablo's biker gang, in less than a year's time, I was making headlines and doing TV appearances again. This time, the subtitle beneath my name didn't read professional wrestler. It said bounty hunter. Long before, later on, years later in the 90s, when they changed to bail enforcement agent and changed all the rules, and that's coming from my own personal experience. I became the guy who shows up at your door at 3 a.m. to haul your ass back to jail after you've jumped bond. I became the guy with the network of informants spending hours at a time in parked cars and hotel rooms on stakeouts, waiting and watching for some sign of my prey. I've tracked down drug dealers, murderers, gang members, sleazy politicians, you name it. The name Dr. D may not be as familiar to wrestling fans today in 2024, but it sure as hell became famous in the underworld. I hunted wanted men and women from Connecticut. Bingo. Facts, truth, reality. That's what you get here on Chaos Corner, on Guardian of Chaos, the YouTube channel. How many fucking times do I gotta tell you? This is real as real can get on this channel. Nobody else does it like this. From Connecticut to LA to Puerto Rico to the Caribbean to Egypt, racking up cumulative caseload that was well into the thousands. I didn't do it simply for the reward, but for the satisfaction of knowing I was making the streets safer, and even on occasion helping someone gone astray get back on the right track. Like the G.O.C. did for 25 years behind the walls. Let that marinate. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. Let that sink in. I'm going to tell you the story of my life from the dirt poor beginnings to my thrilling and not so thrilling days as one of the nation's top bounty hunters. I'll give you a few wrestling stories, but in the end, you're going to find Dr. D is more than just a guy who gave John Stossel what was coming to him. I'm the guy who always gets his man. This is not make-believe. There's nothing phony or fake here. I'm the real deal. All right, fans, I just wanted to bring you something real. My brother, my former boss, employer, and of course, my brothers at Paradise Alley Pro Wrestling, Mario Mancini, Pretty Paul Roma, Paul Perez, Big Dave Paradise, a.k.a. Steve Tracy. This is their brother as well. As a matter of fact, Big Dave Paradise, a.k.a. Big Steve Tracy, was also honed and trained and skilled by Dr. D. David Schultz as a bounty hunter. So I wanted to give you the connection. This is what I do here on the channel. I try to make it relevant for you guys and the fans to get a connection of reality and come somewhere where someone's going to tell you the truth about everything in life. We don't hold back here. And this proves it. Yeah, we have chicanery, comedy, skits, vignettes, and we have a lot of fun and positivity with it. Under the surface, just remember, and I'll say it again to end the show here on Chaos Corner, in order to get respect, you have to start with respecting yourself. Once you do that, you open other people's minds to respecting you. And as always, there's three types of people in this world. Those who don't know what happened, those who wonder what happened, and people like the guardian of chaos, Big Daddy, that make things happen. I'll say that to say this, because I tell it like it is. Don't you dare miss it. Stay tuned to the channel, all social media platforms. I will be back.